Dr. Charlie, thank you very much for coming to my FPK interview. As far as I know, you directed multi-$100 million projects for NASA from 1967 to 1993. And my first question is that what is astrophysics tell you in NASA that you think is useful for business people and business students?
That's a good question. Thank you. You know, running a project is actually a business endeavor. It happened that they were astrophysics projects, but it's not very different from a project any business would do, except systems engineering is so important in space projects. And I had, like you said, many multi-$100 million programs, but none was as, how should I say, followed by the public like Hubble Space Telescope was.
Yeah.
In fact, during my 10 years running the astrophysics division, I launched 12 satellites. 11 worked fine and one didn't, and it was the one that would be the worst one to fail, was Hubble Telescope. I was a member of the failure review board for Hubble, and we found that the mirror had been manufactured to the wrong shape. Actually, to the wrong prescription is more accurate. It was the perfect shape to the wrong prescription. So I thought, well, we made a technical mistake. Technical mistakes happen. It's not a management problem. The failure review board chairman was actually much smarter than me, and he kept looking, and what he found was two things. One is there were many test data that were faulty, that should have been acted on and were not, and also the contractor never told us about these data. So it was so the question was, why did they hide the data and why didn't they tell us? And he was a contractor himself, so he took their position. He said it was a leadership failure that caused the failure of Hubble telescope. Now the reason that's interesting is that it's a social failure that looked like it caused a technical failure. And I was leader of the team, so when he told the Congress that we spent $2 billion in 15 years and built a useless telescope, a leadership failure was the cause, and so it looked like it would come to me. But nobody ever blamed me because nobody in the technical community understood social causes of failures. I then put together secretly the mission that ultimately repaired Hubble in space, and all was forgiven. I was promoted up to the top of NASA, and I was number 3 person in NASA, and I didn't like it. It's all the White House and politics, and I wanted to go work with scientists and engineers and build things. That's what I like doing.
So your findings about the social complex is more applicable to the high-tech companies or to all levels?
It's everything. It's everything. So because I didn't like my job at NASA, I got a job as a professor of leadership in the business school at University of Colorado, and I began studying and teaching leadership to MBAs, undergraduates, and executives.
So what did you bring into your classes?
Well, so what I brought was the mind of a physicist. So physicists like organizing principles. We like formulas. So I took the popular business books of the day, including my own, but they have stories about business leaders and then the 4, 5, 6, or 7 things you're supposed to do. During the times of crisis, I could never remember the 7 things you're supposed to do and do them. So, but I thought there was some principle there. So I started thinking about how does a physicist work? And I remembered something you used to say from our undergraduate days, that the right coordinate system can make an impossible problem into 2 really hard ones. I began playing with coordinate systems with physics, with the actions listed in all those books. Complete failure. I spent a whole summer on this, got nothing. Then one morning I picked up the newspaper and there was a Dilbert cartoon. And it said, every consultant makes his living with a 2x2 matrix. I said, I made this too hard. It's an XY system. I've just got to find the coordinates. At the same time, I was reading the works of Carl Jung on personality development, and he said we build our personalities on choices from around 2 innate processes. Information, which I put on the y-axis, either intuited or sensed. Decision-making, I put on the x-axis, either logical or emotional, and began to use this as a tool to analyze. So I put this on, for example, Gallup's research data, and I saw it sorted the things into 4 things each on the emotional side, 3 things each on the logical side. Then I put it on projects that I worked on that went extremely well. All those factors were there. I began to use this now to analyze everything and see what's going on socially. So I can tell you that in the middle of this, I discovered a book about Space Shuttle Challenger, written by a sociologist. And she argued very persuasively that the issue that blew up the astronauts and killed everyone wasn't technical, it was sociological. And what she said was, it's unfortunate that the sociological explanation is the correct one because these forces are invisible and unacknowledged. And what she said happened was, the question was, why did they launch Challenger when all the data suggested otherwise, that they shouldn't? So this led me down the path of social context. And as a scientist, I've studied now 1,000 teams, compiled data. I can make a 15-minute online measurement and tell you how the team's performing, excuse me, and tell you how to improve the performance. And this is used today by nuclear reactors in France, Lloyd's of London's banks, mines in Malaysia, million-person shoe factories in China. In 75 countries, people are using this tool to analyze what's going on in teams and enhance performance.
So what you mean is that the problem that we have with the challengers or something else can be avoided, right?
Completely.
That comes with your topic of fifth force.
Yes.
You're going to deliver in the
Yes.
management
Yes.
here. So what is it and why should we talk about it?
Okay, so you may know that Mother Nature has 4 forces. The gravity force, which I'm responding to now or I'd fall on the floor. The 2 forces only physicists care about, the strong force and the weak force. And electromagnetic force. Those are the forces the scientists and engineers study for years. Nature's forces. That's all nature has, 4 forces. There's a man-made additional force that controls human behavior called social context, or the 5th force. I'm studying and managing the force that's man-made that controls human behavior. That's my work.
We know that later you created a 4D system, which is based on management expertise in NASA. And this system has contributed to the improvement of leadership and teamwork performance in GE and Pepsi Cola and York. What is it?
It's that organizing system I described before. And then it's a set of tools that go with it, that developed out of it. The system is my book, which is How NASA Builds Teams, which is a reference manual for everything else, and the book by itself. Online tools that you use in 15 minutes to benchmark progress and generate action items. A thing called the context shifting worksheet that you can shift the context of a problem in 90 minutes, and our workshops and our coaching. That's the 4D system, all those tools all working together to enhance performance.
So you think it is applicable to all business people?
It's applicable to toasters in diners, to cockpits of Korean Airlines, and I'll talk about all these cases in a few minutes. Even Fukushima Daiichi was a human social context failure. It was man-made. It wasn't the tsunami and it wasn't the earthquake. The failure of the review boards in contact with me were discussing this. It's man-made. It's the 5th force. If you don't manage it, it kills everything. And so to learn how to deal with Mother Nature's 4 forces takes years of studying. That's what scientists and engineers do. You can learn about the 5th force in a couple of hours how to manage it. It's so simple.
Did you notice any specific features which are associated with the Chinese companies in terms of the 5th force?
Yeah, I know much more about Chinese audiences. What I'm doing is I'm enabling people to use these tools. I'm not using them myself, okay? And so, but what I know, when I come over here and do workshops, you're really interesting people. You're the most affectionate people I ever deal with. And you don't think of yourselves that way, but you are. You're the most inquisitive people I ever deal with. Because every time I come here, I learn something. I get so many questions from Chinese audiences. Western audiences just sit there. You guys ask me everything, right? And so I improve the material. And you're more capitalistic than America, and you're more entrepreneurial than America. You guys are interested more in capital markets and entrepreneurship than most of our country.
So we can put all this into a consideration of 5th force, right?
If it's got a human involved and it's a behavior, the 5th force is driving it. It's that simple.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.